On this week's podcast, Timmy and I will ultimately discuss Venezuela and the arrest of former President Nicolas Maduro. Was it necessary, and what does it say about U.S. foreign policy? But first, we pay homage to Renee Good.
Bald,
Blind,
and buddies. Timmy C, how the hell are you, pal?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's new?
Oldest is going back to college today, so he had a nice long spring break. It's good for him to get back at school.
I don't think it's spring break, dude.
Oh,
I think you're mixing
you're
up
right.
seasons.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
winter
thinking
break.
a couple things at once.
It's pretty early, though. Well, I guess the second week of January is about right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, my nephew goes to Delaware, and they don't go back until, 2 weeks still, the last day of January. So
Wow.
I don't understand. But I think they do trimesters, too. I think they get out later.
Oh, that changes everything.
Yeah. Did he have a nice break?
Yeah.
And I would imagine being with his brother's good, and he'll miss him, and saying hi to mom and having home cooking, right?
Girlfriend.
He's got a girlfriend.
He does.
Well, he's very handsome. I mean, for being an ugly guy, which you clearly are,
He does take after his mother.
Yes, he does. He looks quite a bit like the two of you. He's a combo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I'm leaving for Phoenix for work in the morning. I'll be back Friday afternoon, but it's basically 3 straight days of being in the hotel. The good thing though is my boss, my immediate supervisor, is a big foodie, and so he always has events for us planned after the meetings. I mean, we're basically in a hotel conference room from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m., and then we kind of all meet in the lobby at 5:30, and then go to lunch, or go to dinner, I should say. And he's a big foodie, so he's always got trips and things of that nature. So,
Does he take picture of his meals?
no, that is something that doesn't sit terribly well with me either. I do that because of advertising for the nuts and so forth, but not for anything other than that.
So you've never been at a restaurant and be like, oh, I've got to show this.
No.
No.
I mean, if we have a pizza place here in town that makes a pizza that's double the triple size.
Mm-hmm.
The box is quite literally like a kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's kind of an interesting shtick, and it's fun, but I asked the guy, I said, how do you figure out, he's like, it's basically 2.5 pizzas, and we just make it huge, so each slice, if you're trying to enter your calories, each slice is 2.5.
Yeah.
But it literally, the slice, I'm not exaggerating, is probably 18 inches, top to bottom.
Like a plate, the slice just covers the whole plate?
You need multiple plates.
Wow.
It's so big. Yeah, it's so that's kind of kitschy and fun.
Yeah.
I would take a picture of something,
Take a picture of
that
that,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Or you see a oversized pretzel, but no, I've never been.
Or
in
a decorative
fine
cake or something.
What's that?
Like a decorative cake or something.
Yeah, speaking of which, it's my son's birthday this week.
Oh,
He'll be
yeah.
14.
Happy
Isn't that cool?
birthday.
I know. So, but anyhow, anything new on the horizon for you, pal?
Not too much, no.
Well, I know you wanted to give an update on some stuff, right? On the
I
maybe
did.
the
Speaking of
listeners,
food,
RFK, something with RFK, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So RFK came out with new dietary guidelines. So by federal law, these have to be revised every 5 years, and they're important because they impact things like what food aid and stuff and will pay for, and it just demonstrates the entanglement of the federal government in every aspect of our lives. So he came out with guidance, most of which is quite sound. Cutting down on added sugars.
Before you say quite sound, are you saying that from a medical perspective, or
Yeah.
that you agree with
I do.
Republican policies perspective, or a combo of the two?
Yeah, I clearly do not agree with him on a lot of things, but most of this I can totally get behind.
Well, the one I did notice was the advocation for whole milk or fattier milk, because there is a misnomer that fat is per se always bad for you, and that's not the case, right? Isn't that one example?
Yeah, that's one example. The added sugars, the cutting down on ultra-processed foods, those are really important. The AMA basically supported him. There's sort of mixed support in other areas. So I thought that was great. But sometimes you can sort of overstate your claim. And so he, I think, overstated a bit of a claim here.
He has a habit of doing that.
Yeah.
Which one person drove on the left side of the road and blah, blah, blah. And so now everybody who drives on the left side of the road is responsible for AIDS. He's a little bit dramatic.
Yeah. So on that notion, I was joking around with belief, and I came up with this short bit.
My message is clear: eat real food. Nothing matters more for healthcare outcomes, economic productivity, military readiness, and fiscal stability.
Real food is the key to military readiness.
Tell me, are you having trouble getting that chicken in your rucksack, Private? Sir, no, sir.
Clearly processed food, i.e. Spam, the meals ready to eat, is quite important for military readiness. And so I think he overstated his claim a little bit.
I think the basic statement, though, had validity, which is in terms of overall cost structure for the U.S. and global economy, the impact of, food-ish type stuff is taking a toll, is it not, on our health, our longevity, and so forth. Maybe military readiness wasn't the best example, but maybe, I don't know, was he standing there with generals or something and when he did this press conference? Far be it for me to defend RFK, but I'm just curious the optics.
He was saying that young people, because of diseases related to diet and nutrition, are less, eligible to serve in the military. So, I mean, it totally makes sense. I just thought it was, it was a pretty bold claim.
The key to happiness is real food.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I got you. He's not wrong, though. And one of the things that I do say, even though I find him to be a kook, for lack of a better term, is that maybe doing things differently in the most obese and, in many ways, unhealthiest country on the planet may not be the worst thing in the world, right? So
yeah.
And
so I'm in favor.
B made a joke about that, saying essentially, everybody's upset about a guy in the fattest country in the world saying, let's do something different. So, but we've talked about this in the podcast, have we not, Tim?
Yeah.
And I think the best piece of advice I've ever heard about food was the following, which is when you go to the grocery store, don't go down the aisles. Stay on the outer rim, which is where all the produce, meat, fish, chicken, what have you, is available. That's number one. And number two is, if you're about to eat something, ask yourself, was this available when my grandmother was my age? And it tells you about, the impact of processing. Now, it's also led to longevity and increased lifespan and things of that nature, but it also has a negative impact on our health. So I appreciate it. I do. I think RFK's a kook, but he might be onto something, right?
Yeah. I back him on this one. So
I do too. And that leads me to my trivia question, by the way, Timmy. So one of the things we joke about, Notre Dame was completely, the largest injustice in the history of humanity. In my opinion, obviously, was leaving Notre Dame out of the. This supersedes everything else, Maybe I'm overstating it, right, Tim?
Maybe
is leaving Notre Dame out of the playoffs. That being said, however, in light of Indiana's performance, and then with a legitimate claim to maybe being the best team of all time based on current statistics, maybe Notre Dame being left out of the playoffs was a good thing because I didn't want to get beat down by Indiana. But that being said, it's always better to say, hey, we could have beaten them, as opposed to actually having the results on the field and going, we got our ass kicked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they have an argument now, Indiana does, to being the greatest team of all time, should they win a week from Monday. That being said, the trivia question this week, do you know the college football team with the most losses in history, Tim?
Well, Northwestern.
Nope.
Nope.
I'll give you the answer next week.
All right.
Yeah. We talked about excellence. We're going to talk about futility. So.
Yeah.
And before we get into, what are we talking about? What's today's discussion? We'll talk about Renee Good in just a second, but what's today's discussion about?
Venezuela. This was your call. Yeah.
Yeah. I this is something that really gets me fired up on a couple of, and I'll present it in three different arenas, and I'll explain in just a moment. But before I do, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about an issue that's quite topical, which is the ICE agents in Minneapolis that, depending on your perspective, but again, and this may be something, and I don't mean this to minimize it, but the fact that you can't see and watch these videos, Timmy, I think there's a sensory perception that just, it's powerful. From my perspective, the ICE agent, I'm not prepared to say that he murdered her. I am prepared to say that he completely escalated the situation beyond control to the point where a young woman, Renee Good, is now dead. And video is a very powerful medium because you can't lie on video. Right?
Unfortunately, John, you can now.
Touche. Well said. That's true. But you had a little bit of a different thought on this. I'm curious to see what yours is.
Well, so there were 30,000 traffic fatalities last year. A vehicle, I've been hit by a car when I was young.
You were?
Yeah, it was a minor.
I never heard that.
Yeah.
When?
Oh, I was riding, I didn't see much, and I was riding my bike, and somebody pulled out of their driveway and clunk. So
I just got that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, so vehicles can be deadly weapons. And here in Wisconsin, somebody ran over a Christmas parade. When somebody is already engaging in an illegal act, parking their vehicle across the road, etc., and then they start maneuvering their vehicle, I think that impacts the threat perception of the people on the scene, and things happen.
Timmy, you're not going to hear me disagree on anything you just said. What I am telling you, however, is if you watch the video, this woman, the ICE officer claims she was trying to run him over. The ICE officer was to the right of the automobile. She was turning away from him. And again, you're absolutely right. This woman is committing an illegal act, and I have very little sympathy. Simply because you don't agree with something doesn't mean you should go break the law. I get that. And why this becomes such a big issue, you understand. I know there's 30,000 fatalities from automobile, is because it's germane to something else, which is, should we be having ICE agents deployed in major U.S. cities? And it's quite interesting to me that all the ICE agents, at least to my knowledge, I may very well be wrong, are only deployed in blue cities. And that, to me...
we've gotten feedback on this. Friend of the show, Ben, I think, sent us some statistics the last time we talked about this, that they were getting deployed to, like, Houston and things like that. So I'm actually not sure, but
But Houston's clearly a blue enclave in a red state, is it not? I mean, come on.
I think that they're also, John, getting deployed to cities which flaunt national immigration law and policy, right?
Okay.
Which are blue cities often, right?
But this issue became such that I think part of it is maybe the Trump administration, which it's incredible to say this, might be lying. I'm shocked to say this. They might have got out in front of their skis and basically immediately defended the ICE agent, absent seeing the videos. The videos come out, and now they're trying to sort of delicately walk it back while at the same time calling out that she was breaking the law. Two things can be true at the same time. What I can say without equivocation is Renee Good should be alive today.
Correct.
That's it, period.
Yeah.
So, the question is, who's responsible for that? To my mind, from seeing those videos, it's the ICE agent overreacted.
Right.
So, it's a horrible situation, but I think it's topical because of, the question of the Trump administration's behavior. Oh, by the way, did you see in an interview with the New York Times, Trump is now saying that he may very well tear down the West Wing as well?
No.
It's like, oh my good God. Now, one of my friends who hates him as much as I do said, great. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yes. As long as he's focused on that, he can't be screwing up other things. But then I said, yeah, but look at Venezuela, which leads into Venezuela.
Yeah.
Timmy, tell our listeners, all 12 of them, what happened about a week ago in Venezuela.
So there was a very secret, well-kept, well-executed intervention in Venezuela where the U.S. Took Maduro and his wife and brought them back to the States, apparently to face justice. They left the vice president in charge? And so, yeah, that's the story, sort of a decapitation abduction, I guess you'd call it, in Venezuela.
And from your perspective, because again, only the United States has the ability, for better or for worse, to execute these types of missions. There is an argument, and I'm not going to disagree with it. Brett Stevens, amongst others, has put it forth that, look, there is legitimate reasons that Nicolas Maduro should be removed, right?
Mm-hmm.
My concern with that is a couple of things. Number one, and I'll present them to you. Number one is that's true with a number of world leaders.
Indeed.
And it's a very dangerous precedent. And it's clearly, even to people who don't follow this stuff, it seems like a money grab for the oil that Venezuela has. You're not going to hear me per se necessarily even say that's a bad thing. People always are like, oh, don't shed my blood for oil. Well, stop driving your automobile, right?
Right.
Our national economy, the health of the global economy depends upon access to oil for better or for worse. So, my thing always is in foreign policy, when you say, oh, this guy's a terrible person, blah, 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 we needed to get rid of him. You could say the same thing about 7 different leaders in Africa. Most Americans, most people listening to this podcast couldn't tell you but 12 countries in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Am I right or am I wrong on that?
I agree. Yeah, I think the fact he is a terrible leader is not sufficient justification because there are so many, and then there's so many other terrible leaders out there.
Well, let me ask you point blank. Do you agree with this mission?
No, I don't think I do actually. I mean,
Yeah.
I followed Nick.
This is an area where I thought you and I would actually agree.
Yeah, yeah. I know Nikki Haley went. I mean, well, first of all, let's talk about how bad of a leader he is, right?
You're talking about Maduro.
Maduro. Yeah,
Because that could
sorry.
apply to the current occupant of the White House as well, as I see it. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So he essentially came to power around. The Hugo Chavez regime basically came to power around 1999. Interestingly enough, one of the things they did was abolish their Senate. We hear progressives in this country wanting to do that as well.
I love how it's only progressives. Why don't you throw in California there too, Timmy? There's no one. Yeah. And by the way, say what you want, by the way, but did you see that clip with Jesse Ventura who went to visit his high school? And he said, I came here to congratulate these students for standing up against the ICE agents because there's one political party, the Republicans in the United States, who don't believe in the Constitution of the United States. You're talking about progressives. It's the Republicans right now that are in power that are acting as though, the Congress is a sort of a hindrance to be swatted away like a bee.
Right.
Are they not?
I mean, Congress has slept on its duty for a long
no question.
time.
Two things can be true at the same time. I blame Congress. One of my buddies, I sent this quote that George Will wrote because he said that Trump is treating Washington, D.C. like it's his chew toy. And he said, I don't blame Trump anymore. I blame the Congress and the Republicans for letting him because he just does whatever he wants. It's like the kid with a gun. He's going to do whatever he wants until you take it from him. So.
Yeah. So just in economic terms, I found this fascinating. So the Maduro and Chavez regime, basically, do you know what the GDP of Venezuela in 2010 was roughly 400 billion? By 2020, it was 50 billion.
Yeah.
That's what socialism does, right?
75 to 80% less. Yeah.
It runs countries into the ground.
But but that leads to my next question. Finish your point, and then I'm going to ask the three questions I want to ask.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying he is, so by all estimates, and that doesn't even talk about the repression, the suppression of free elections, like all that stuff, whether he's facilitating, drug trafficking, all those things point to the fact he is, yes, a terrible leader, but I don't think that necessarily gives us the license.
Okay. Here's how I see it. Number one is only the United States, Bill Maher has joked about this on Real Time, only the United States actively sits there and ponders who should we attack next. Like, bomb him,
What about Putin and Ukraine? Like,
okay, you understand the joke though, right? I mean, only the United States has this sort of arrogance, and you're right on Russia. Point taken, received, understood. But the point being is I tend to be very conservative as it relates to foreign policy, and this is why I said that I expected you and I to agree, which is absent U.S. interests, I don't want people intervening. To my mind, there's no U.S. interest. Perhaps you could make the argument indirectly, oil, but that's a long slog, and now all of the oil companies are basically coming out and saying, we're not going to invest there because there's no political stability. To your point, the GDP has gone from 400 billion to now 50 billion, and there's no functioning government, there's no stability, there's no security. You can't create a business in an environment like that. So if you're going to make the argument it's about oil, that's fine. So
they owe around 4 billion barrels of oil to China based on contracts.
Okay, but is it our responsibility to intervene with the oil production for China?
No, well, that's what I'm saying, though. That will be a sticky point if we think we're going to get oil out of this deal.
So I tend to be pretty conservative as it relates to foreign policy. Absent U.S. interest, don't do it. That's why I didn't agree with overthrowing Saddam Hussein. And I asked the woman running for Congress last week, was it a mistake? She was reluctant to say so. I said it was a mistake 25 years ago. I'll say it again today. It's a mistake. It was a mistake. It remains a mistake. It will always be a mistake to my mind. That doesn't mean I'm right. But there was no strategic U.S. interest, and we've only made the situation worse. So that's number one. Number two is why does the United States have an obligation? And I say this, but then I'm going to answer my own question. Why do we have to be the world's policeman? And there is an element, and Bill Gates had asked his father, apparently, this may be an urban legend, but he had asked his father, why if I have great wealth, do I have to give it away? Do I have a bigger responsibility than somebody else? And he looked at him and said, because you do. There's an element of truth to that, right? Mm-hmm. The third thing, though, is this leads to the foundational question for me is should we not revisit, as I've said to my dying day, legalizing drugs, because the contention that the Trump administration is putting forth is we're stopping illegal drugs from flowing into this country. That sounds great on its face to me, but then he turns around and pardons the Honduran president, who was responsible for even a larger amount of illegal drugs, according to indictments, making its way to the United States. So how do you square that circle? I'm not trying to understand Trump. To me, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall. There's no point. But I think those three basic issues stick with me. Number one is in foreign policy, should we not exercise it only and if it involves a U.S. interest, right? Number two is
on that point, though, what's an interest, right? We have interests everywhere. So you'd have to sort of calibrate that.
But and even the most generous of suppositions, does Venezuela count as being in U.S. interest? To my mind, it does not.
Right. And I don't think it poses any imminent threat.
Right. So, and again, the problem that you have is when they turn around and they say, we overthrew Saddam Hussein. Great. We overthrew Nicolas Maduro. I'm happy that Nicolas Maduro is in custody. But the next question to my mind is, and Colin Powell is famous for this, which is the pottery barn analogy. If you break it, you own it. Mm-hmm. We now own whatever happens in Venezuela.
Yeah.
That didn't seem to be a fight that needed to be picked. Further, I have long maintained this, that one of the major reasons, whether we can prove it directly or indirectly, one of the major reasons that we have President Trump, both part one and part two, is because of the anger that was inherent in the electorate, particularly with blue-collar voters, because of the Iraq War. It wasn't rich people's kids going over there and dying. It was these sort of blue-collar workers. He espoused his entire basis of his foreign policy was, I'm going to stay out of needless conflicts, blah, blah, blah. And then inserts himself headlong into this and says, well, he's an awful human being. No. So again, I'm struggling with, number one, the strategic interest. Number two, why does the United States have to be the world's policeman? And number three, is this about drugs? Because if it is, how do you then say, the solution is I'm going to pardon the Honduran president, but I'm going to arrest this guy? The whole thing just reeks to me.
Yeah, the drug argument I think is very hard to make, because also if we just closed our southern border more effectively, I mean, that's where drugs are coming. A lot of drugs are coming in from with the help of China. So yeah, I think I agree with that.
Why does the United States have to be the world's policeman?
Well, there's the world's policeman, and then there's our neighborhood watch, right? And so since the Monroe Doctrine, we've said the Western Hemisphere is ours to police. We have taken that on. I think it's probably because of strategic interests, right?
Okay, but Honduras is also in the Western Hemisphere.
It's true.
And it's closer to us than Venezuela. The man is so full of you-know-what and so duplicitous and talks out of both sides of his mouth. And I've accepted that as par for the course. I have. But this idea that we had justification for doing this in any way, shape, or form to me rings hollow.
Well,
until I hear from someone tell me a reason we needed to get Nicolas Maduro, I'm just going to say Trump now owns this. It's not going to matter to his voters because he'll just tell you the sky's on fire and they'll be like, oh, wow. Truth doesn't matter, and I have to accept that.
Well, I think there's at least two thoughts here. The first one's kind of a cop-out. We don't know what we don't know, right? So there could be a reason that we're not privy to because,
I'm not even giving you that, Tim. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Okay.
And here's why. We maintain the world's most effective, arguably the world's most effective intelligence services. We have spies everywhere. We were 100% certain, the CIA was, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. They didn't turn up and they went, well, he probably hid them. You can't have it both ways. You cannot say we have the best intelligence system in the world. We have a military that's, larger than the next 8 nations combined. And then when it doesn't work out, go, well, we just missed it. No, you can't tell me that we don't know what we don't know. And again, a 50.
No. I'm saying you and I don't know. Like there could be a justifiable military reason that you and I are not privy to.
Again, I'm not giving you that.
Okay.
I'm not, because there's no...
I know it sounds like a cop-out.
Went from,
yeah.
You even said it yourself. The economy of Venezuela went from $400 billion to $50 billion. How does a country that's shrinking by 90% become an increased threat to us? I mean, you could argue political instability and all these other things, but the same thing applies to 24 countries in Africa.
Okay.
It's so infuriating to me.
I mean, well, for example, let's just totally hypothetical. Let's say some third party built a bioweapons lab in the heart of, Venezuela, where it's hard to detect. And then we'll use drug trafficking, Bondian scheme. We'll use drug trafficking networks to poison the world. Like, then intervention would make sense. And I'm not saying this is the case, but like, I do think
that sounds like Hollywood. This is something a Hollywood director would come up with. That's not. Again, if that was even remotely the case, don't you think I keep saying the Bush administration, and part of the reason I keep saying the Bush administration, I apologize, it's a Freudian slip, is because even in spite of everything Trump's done, I will long tell you that the amount of tangible damage the Trump administration did with Iraq supersedes everything that Trump has done so far.
Right.
To that end, however, don't you think the Trump administration would have at least let something out?
You'd think so.
He's basically saying, "Oh, we own it. We're going to get the oil," and he's a bad guy. And I'm hearing stuff that what put him over the top was watching Nicolas Maduro dance. Like that he was like sticking his finger in the eye of America, and Trump felt the need to show him. I don't think that the Oval Office is a plaything for a guy who's a narcissistic egomaniac moron. It makes me irate.
I think it's helpful because this struck me when it happened. So I did some looking back. Do you remember Operation Just Cause, where the first Bush administration went and got Manuel Noriega?
I do remember that, but we were, in middle school?
Yeah, we were like 10, middle schoolish.
And there's all sorts of interconnectivity with that the Trump or the Bush administration at the time, he was the CIA director. I mean, there's all sorts of books about that. I mean, the United States has been headlong in the drug trade for years. We've been talking out of both sides of our mouth for years about that.
But here's the deal on this one. There were standing grand jury indictments for him before they went in. Bush had bipartisan support from some significant senators, including John Kerry, actually. And the incident was actually triggered by, there were elections where Jimmy Carter said they weren't run fairly. And then there was an incident where a U.S. soldier was killed by Panamanian forces. And that sort of forced Bush's hand. And it's just so different. Like, you can still say that it was or wasn't the right choice, but he went about it in such a different way. And I think that matters, so I don't think they're as similar as you think, but
I'm not saying they are similar.
Well, I thought about it because it comes up.
Right. We invaded aside from the fact that it's a South American, Central American country and we took their president, prisoner, that's where the similarities to me end.
Yeah.
And isn't that further indication? I mean, in 1973, the War Powers Act was enacted that basically tried to restrict the ability of presidents to get us into wars. And this was a reflexive action after Vietnam because a lot of people felt WJ lied us into it in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and so forth. And in 1973, they basically said, absent congressional approval, the president is oftentimes in emergent circumstances where he or she has to act. They have 60 days to execute military authority, absent congressional authority. It seems to me in 1988 or 89, whatever year it was that we went and got Noriega, George H.W. Bush took that into account and got Congress, to your point, to help him.
Yeah.
Trump looks at Congress, and I don't blame Trump for this. I blame Congress for this. Looks as though it's a gnat to be swatted away. I'll just deal with them later. And gets a fly swatter. He invaded a sovereign country to take a guy, albeit terrible guy, prisoner.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, wow, no big deal. I mean, this doesn't happen in other countries. I mean, you had a point about Russia and Putin. I got it. But it's just Congress needs to develop that thing called a backbone again.
Well, they have to do two things, John. They have to cooperate and compromise, right? And those are two very hard things right now. We had Dahlia on last week, right? And she was talking about how she, cooperate and compromise, but that doesn't get you sound bites, and it doesn't play to your base. So it is really tough.
It is. And again, though, I think you and I can agree on this. Congress, I blame Congress for this more than I blame Trump, because Trump's just a kid with a toy that's going to keep doing whatever he wants until somebody tells him enough. Right. And nobody's going to tell him he's enough. I think that's why he's in panic mode. And again, I don't even care at this point. I've stopped paying attention that the Democrats pick up the House and the Senate this year in 10 months, because he's already said to his base it's going to be impeachment number 3. I haven't seen anything at this point, but again, I don't know what I don't know that merits impeachment. I think he absolutely should have been impeached for January 6th. I will say that. I don't know if I've told you that, Timmy.
I think so, yeah.
To my dying day. I haven't seen anything so far. I mean, what are you going to impeach him for tearing down the East Wing? I mean, you're going to impeach him for Venezuela and, Clinton did the same thing when he bombed Bosnia and all these sorts of there's all these sorts of parallels. I get it. But somebody who tells him no might be a healthy thing in our democracy.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. We're we tend to agree more than not on this one.
On this one, yeah. Do you? Let me ask you this before we get into our hero and whack job of the week. Do you agree with the premise that absent U.S. interest, because again, Jimmy Carter was the first president who basically put morality and, we're not going to do business with China if they have sweatshops and blah, blah, blah. And to your point earlier, when I was joking, you played this on our year-end clip about you sound like a liberal now, right? Where you're basically saying these companies have to say to China, no, we're not going to do business with you. Do you think that U.S. foreign policy is as simple as I see it, which is absent U.S. interest, and I'll tell you this again and again, and I know it sounds heartless, but absent U.S. strategic interest and direct strategic interest, we should not be getting ourselves involved in some of this stuff, period, full stop.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I still have hangovers from our attempts at nation building.
Right, but you're the one who was saying these companies should say to China, I'm not going to do business with you.
I think that's different.
Oh, you separate the two?
Yeah.
Oh, so you think companies have an obligation, not the U.S. government? Okay.
I think if all other things being equal, China is in some ways is a strong country, right? And I think your options for interventions in Venezuela and China are different just based on that fact.
Okay, fair enough. Point received. So, well, Timmy, we have to start off the new year on a strong note, and I'm going to bring back a tried and true whack job. My whack job, and again, I've said this 1,000 times, I'm at the point now in the second Trump administration where I really, in many ways, don't blame him. I blame Congress. I blame the people that enable him. There are very intelligent people, and the people that I hold the most disdain for are the people that are well-educated, well-read, blah, blah, blah. And example A of that is J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance, to me, is the whack job of the week this week. J.D. Vance wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy, became famous. He came out very strongly in 2016 and said he was 100% anti-Trump. He has since shifted. Now, whether or not that shift, some people maintain it's legitimate. He sees the world through a different lens. Whether other people say it's political opportunism, I will defer to Mitt Romney, who basically has said J.D. Vance is the lowest form of a politician. And Mitt Romney, for all of his faults, is an ethical, seemingly decent human being. Why am I bringing him up? Because the shooting with Renee Good comes out, and instantaneously, the Trump administration says this is an act of domestic terrorism. This woman was attempting to do X. Renee Good was parked illegally. There's no question about it. Even with that being conceded, she should still be alive today. ICE should not have fired at her, period. J.D. Vance comes out, and I blame J.D. Vance more even so than Trump because he is a Yale-educated lawyer. He is a brilliant, brilliant mind who, at least in my hope, based on his previous statements before he became pro-Trump, recognizes the fallacy of some of the things and the craziness of some of the things that Trump has done. And in fact, he has called Trump sort of an opiate for the poor. To that end, he comes out very strongly and says this is without a doubt domestic terrorism, even in light of the videos. And Timmy, I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm going to make a joke. You said I didn't see much when I was riding the bike. You can't see the videos. There is something visceral about watching this video. That officer, from my perspective at least, and again, I'm not saying that he wasn't justified in acting, but he should not have shot Renee Good. And J.D. Vance trying to justify it, even in spite of what we see, reminds me of that old adage of the Soviet Union. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? Mm-hmm. My lying eyes tell me exactly what I saw. I saw what I saw. Renee Good should be alive, and J.D. Vance is my whack job of the week for trying to justify it. Period.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I will say it's harder to fake multiple videos from multiple angles, which we have a lot of footage on this one. So I hear you. Well, my hero, speaking of vehicles, is a gentleman named Gary Bollier. I came across this post on Substack. You can find us on Substack, of course, at Ideas First, Substack.com.
Are you engaging in capitalism and telling our listeners to advertise our podcast?
Just directing people. Yeah. So, folks, speaking of which, why don't you make sure to share, like, subscribe, and post about us somewhere. That'll help us here at the Bald Blinded Buddies podcast. So this gentleman named Gary Bollier is a truck driver and describes an incident where he rendered aid to ladies on the side of the road. Actually helped her get to her daughter's emergency surgery. So what he realized is truckers are all about, they have communication, a lot of them use CBs, and he developed this project which is called Code Angel, which I think is also, they use as CB lingo for somebody who needs help. And truckers have rendered all kinds of aid to people, including helping people who have escaped from kidnapping and trafficking.
Wow. Can you link to this article? I want to read it now.
Yeah. No, I'll link to it in the show notes. I think they even have an app. But it's just so cool because, we talk about certain people doing terrible things. And just this notion of somebody saying, I can help. We're out here, we're doing things, and it's beautiful. And so I just wanted to highlight him as my hero.
Timmy, nothing more needs to be said. That is one of the best stories I've heard. Well done, sir.
Yeah. Well done to Gary. We're just talking about
exactly. And well done. I had never heard it. I had never thought of this. That's wonderful. Wonderful story.
Yeah.
So, well, Timmy, I am off to Pahonix. Have you ever seen that old FedEx ad where the guy says, I want to ship something to Pahonix? And he says, do you mean Phoenix?
That's funny.
Anyhow, I'm off to Phoenix, which will be nicer weather, but unfortunately it's not going to be as glamorous as it sounds. But we'll catch up later this week. And I just want to wish everybody, again, a Happy New Year. There is also a Seinfeld where he has maintained that you can no longer say, you have a 3-day window to say Happy New Year, and after that it's over. But if you haven't listened to the podcast and you're just picking us up in 2026, I'm going to say Happy New Year. What's your feeling on that, by the way? What's the line for when you should be able to say Happy New Year?
I think it's probably like your first encounter with a person after the new year, probably at least early January.
Right, but there has to be it can't be in April.
Yeah.
You run into somebody, you run into your accountant, you're filing your tax.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna fly.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Right? Like my absolute drop dead line is it has to be in the month of January.
Yeah.
Preferably from the 15th forward, meaning the 1st to the 15th, right?
Yeah. Now, what about folks who celebrate the Chinese New Year? Do we have to roll after that too?
That's a good question. I don't know. And that's the Chinese New Year is coming up, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. So I might have just talked out of both sides of my mouth. That's a good point, though. I like it. So, well, anyhow, I just wanted to wish everybody a Happy New Year. And this is John Boland signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
And speaking of the new year, we have a lot of cool guests on the docket. So stick with us. Share, like, subscribe, do all that capitalist stuff. This is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.